Hello, welcome to the Citrus Garden. My name is Christina. This is a reading for Twin Flame Divine Masculines, or if you don't resonate with that label, it could just be for you if you're wanting to sort of learn more about how to balance the masculine energies within yourself as well, so keep that in mind. The main focus for this reading are 3 questions. What's your current energy? What should your focus be on, or how can you shift your focus? And where is an area of growth? So I'm going to start with the bottom of the deck energy. So you have success, which I love so much. It's going to come back. I feel like what this is talking about is like, I feel like you are at almost like a significant choice, or you're trying to make a decision and in trying to anticipate what the results will be, and it's going to end in success is what this card is trying to reassure you about. And then you have here the King of Swords and the 10 of Wands, which I love as a combination so much because the 10 of Wands talks about putting down your burdens, right? And sometimes that involves sort of a King of Swords energy, which is kind of like cutting off or cutting any sort of energies that are creating a burden, perhaps, right? Like if you have a lot of sort of things to do, it's like trying to plan or organize what's your priority, what can sort of be left till later, and putting down sort of anything that may, like if you're trying to like do too much, right? It's like just putting it down for a minute. It doesn't have to be resolved right away. It's kind of like the energy of this thing, and really prioritizing perhaps what it is you're focusing on. Which is a good energy to be in, I think. And then you have the Deja Vu card, which is interesting because it does have this sort of like twin energy within it. But because also with the white and black on either side, it talks about balancing sort of feminine and masculine energies within yourself as well. So that's kind of like an overall theme is how this card is playing it through. But because it's also bringing in this Deja Vu energy, and the first card out of this deck to come out for your current energy is this Maktub, which to me is sort of representing like a cosmic remote control. So this card has come out in the past in like this week's readings as being like at a choice point where you have sort of like different options of where you're wanting to go. And what's interesting about this card, because it came out as like a choose your own adventure, I'll link that reading above in case that's relevant to you, is that if you make sort of a wrong choice, not that there are any wrong choices, but if you made a choice that sort of ended up not in an ideal place, it's kind of like the universe almost like sends you back to this original choice point to make a new decision, to make a different choice. And I feel like that's why the Deja Vu energy is coming up, because it's kind of like you went down a certain path, it didn't perhaps end up in the way that you anticipated or hoped for. And so it's kind of like Deja Vu, where you're returning to that similar choice point, perhaps with slightly different characters or energies, or like the surface level, how it presents may look slightly different, but the underlying energy is the same, is kind of what this Deja Vu is talking about. But now it's like you're wanting this to be successful is basically what the current energy is for you. And I feel like you are going to make the right choice, because you have here the very first energy, or like the very first section of what's your current energy. You have the Strength and the Judgment card, which I love so much. I'd love to see this Strength card all the time. The Judgment card is actually talking about sort of like that, the universal kind of force that is allowing you to almost like start again, or like make another choice, pick a new option, a different thing that perhaps you chose in the past, because that path did not lead to success, just generally. And it feels like it's wanting to be with this Two of Cups, right? It's about this Two of Cups. Whether, like, I'm assuming it's with your counterpart. This is sort of like the energy that you're wanting to go towards, right? And because it kind of feels like there's sort of this energy of like false starts, especially in the end part, where perhaps this is something that you've wanted to go towards for a while, or wanted to do, or whatever it is, whatever this Two of Cups represents. But it's kind of like when that option presented itself in the past, perhaps you didn't choose it for whatever reason. And it's kind of like through that experience, because this card, the message that comes through with this card is like, even if you pick the wrong choice or the choice that doesn't lead to success, you still learn something from that experience, right? And so having to now integrate what it is that you learned in choosing that other option, and how it is you can bring that lesson or that learning or understanding into this new option is basically what this is talking about. But the strength here is important because I do feel like it's going to be, or it's going to perhaps bring up some challenges or conflict as well. I was getting very strongly that your message today has a lot of like Mars and Saturn energy, which talks about action, right? Like wanting to take action or having the motivation necessary. Mars can also bring in like conflict as well, which is also here on the table. And Saturn is sort of the very like masculine energy of like routine and structure, which is this strength card, right? It's like sticking to or like learning hard lessons, having to go through a lot of challenge and hardship in order to gain something that is necessary, right? Like having to learn or discipline, that kind of energy is kind of what's coming through for you today. But you have here the Six of Swords, which I love so much because it came out in the Divine Feminine reading, a different deck, but it was still talking about you, the DM, moving towards this relationship or union, whatever the Two of Cups is, and doing so with like almost like passing over any sort of obstacle. It's like very quickly moving into a place that's like a turbulent sort of energetic state or emotional state, and moving into something that's more calm, more fulfilling, more easy, I want to say. So it's interesting that this card came out again. And then the Five of Wands, which is this Mars energy of like conflict, because it's kind of looking like you're about to step into some sort of conflict. But because it came through the Six of Swords in the DF reading, it was talking about like quickly sort of surpassing any conflict is what that card was talking about. So I want to bring that into this aspect here as well. How I see this Five of Swords is kind of just like the energy of like the holidays, where it's like you're with family and it's just like a lot of sort of conflicting opinions, right? It's like if you talk about politics with your family, it can kind of just end up in this sort of argumentative mess. So there could be some sort of dynamic. Of course, it's American Thanksgiving weekend. I thought it was last weekend, but it's actually this weekend. So that could be a dynamic where it's just like perhaps you're having to get through the weekend where there's just a lot of like conflict, or just like a lot of, if it's not conflict, it could just be like differences in opinion that sort of you're having to use your strength here. But it's like your focus is absolutely on the union or the partnership, because you have the one card. This came out for the DFs as well, as like having to focus on that, or that's what they were being sort of asked to focus on. I feel like that's your current energy. It's like you're moving towards this, but there still may be like one or two kind of checkpoints or obstacles that you are needing to get through, but you absolutely know how to, because these are sort of like the lessons that you've already learned through past experiences, especially because it's coming out with the deja vu. It's like something that you've already sort of gone through before. It's just sort of coming up again, especially because Mars is in retrograde right now. It may be coming up again just for you to actually confirm to yourself that you've learned that lesson, or you're not going to go down that path again, or or whatever it is. And you are going to be successful is basically what that's talking about. And then you have here the Page of Pentacles and the weightlessness. So I was kind of seeing this as like the feminine energy in the dynamic, but it could also be yours as well. As like if you are sort of experiencing this conflict, Five of Wands energy around you, it may be talking about sort of focusing in on the things that bring you peace and comfort, like reading or things that are very grounded, because this weightlessness card, it is weightlessness has been coming through with the message of like kind of like if you are trying to move towards something and it's not yet in your physical environment, it can kind of make you feel ungrounded in that like you have a lot of energy that you're wanting to move towards or wanting to use towards a certain task or whatever focus. But because it's not yet in your physical, that energy sort of gets dispelled to other things. And so it can make you feel ungrounded is basically what this card is talking about. So this combination is perhaps talking about like if you feel that sort of weightlessness or like ungroundedness, or if there's a lot of sort of just like conflict within your physical environment, just to sort of focus on activities that you find grounding, basically. Okay. The next section is how can you shift your focus or what should you be focusing on? What's interesting here is that you have the protection and the peace card. So this protection or this peace card came out in the DF reading as well. But which I'll get into, but you have here the protection and the Ten of Swords. So what this is talking about is like, I feel like this is a past event, right? I feel like this is whatever it is you learned when you took that other option. It's like you took a different choice. There was some sort of event here. Perhaps it just ended badly, or because the Ten of Swords talks about like ultimate sort of dark night of the soul. And that might be, you may be still kind of feeling the effects of that perhaps, or just like wanting, because of this protection card, wanting to sort of lock that aspect away, or you may be in a sort of a self-protective mode because of this wound or event or whatever it was. The good thing about the Ten of Swords is kind of like you can't get any worse than this, right? It's like it's gonna clear up. There's always a fresh start that comes after the Ten of Swords, and I feel like that's what this peace energy is talking about. It's like there absolutely is sort of peace now that whatever this thing is now over. This protection card's gonna come up again though, because I feel like that's also what your focus is on here as well. You have the King of Wands and the Three of Cups, and then also the Emperor, which I love, because the King of Wands and the Emperor, that's more of this like Mars energy, right? Like wanting to take action. Perhaps moving into more of like a light, joyful, kind of playful energy, because the Three of Cups is like reuniting with friends, or like having like fun, right? Just like having fun, sort of celebration, reunion kind of energy. I feel like that's what you're moving towards or wanting to move towards, or if you're not, maybe that should be what you're moving towards. And the Emperor is also like a natural sort of progression from the King of Wands. However, this Emperor I always see as being kind of like in contemplation. So it's like perhaps you're wanting to move towards this sort of Three of Cups, more playful, or like being able to take action. But there's this energy here of like almost like pausing and waiting and like considering all of your options or planning something. And it's towards the Nine of Pentacles. So this could be your counterpart. It could be something like, because the Nine of Pentacles is very independent, right? Like very sort of perhaps financially or just like stability wise, like very independent, can stand on their own, likes to have a lot of things going on, perhaps. And it's kind of just like the message that was kind of coming through with this protection and peace. It's like perhaps there's a bit of a delay because you may be anticipating that if you were to sort of make an offer or like move towards this one or move towards your counterpart, there may be this sort of like protection on their part as well, because it may be this Ten of Swords moment might have been between the two of you, right? There may have been sort of this painful sort of ending kind of energy in the past. I want to say it's not a current energy. It may have been just like in the past, and that's why this sort of deja vu moment is coming in, because it feels like you're being given another opportunity to sort of move towards this one. And there may be some sort of like self-protection perhaps for you, but you may also be anticipating that sort of like self-protection on their part as well. Okay. It's interesting because you have here as well. I'm going to start with this one, which is talking about inner balance, right? Like being sort of just like whatever's happening in your outer reality is just maintaining that sort of calm, inner balance, emotional stability kind of state. I feel like that is a shared energy between you and your counterpart. Like you're both sort of in this state. So if you are or that should be your focus, right? It's like maintaining this sort of like inner balance despite anything that's sort of going on, because I do feel like there is sort of like a meeting energy between the two of you where if you are sort of wanting to make an offer, or not even make an offer, it's just like maybe you just want to like meet up for drinks or something and have a conversation of like trying to be more in that sort of playful kind of light energy and moving away from sort of the heaviness that perhaps was between the two of you. I do feel like your counterpart is open to that with the Breath card. But for here with this card, the Resolution, because I'm seeing this as your energy, especially with the Emperor, because that can kind of come in with a lot of sort of the protection, right? But in this case, like self-protection of like, because this one has sort of like a veil, they're all covered up. And what I was noticing today is that the hand is sort of covering the heart, right? It's like perhaps there's a reluctance on your part to sort of share, perhaps even share what happened, right? If this is not between the two of you, this Ten of Swords, it could be that something happened to you where you were going through like a really tough time, right? And that I feel like that's over now, or it's like clearing out. And it may be sort of a self-protection of like not wanting to share what happened simply because it might just be a painful memory or whatever it is. But it's what's needed here is the inner balance and calm and stability, which I do think that you have or have cultivated recently in this sort of experience. That may be sort of the lesson or whatever it is that you learned, is sort of how to maintain this inner peace, right? Despite sort of any sort of challenge. I do feel that you are wanting resolution within this situation though. Okay, and then moving on to where's an area of growth. This part's a little bit confusing, but I'm going to try my best. So you have your abundance and pain and then growth. Because for me, this message is clear. Pain and growth are sort of the two horses attached to the same chariot, right? It's like they're both necessary for movement. Just like any sort of growth requires a little bit of pain or effort. Because it came out with abundance, I feel like there perhaps DM, you were experiencing an abundance of pain is kind of how this came through. I don't know what that is, or it could be related to whatever this Ten of Swords moment is. Perhaps you went through a really, really trying time. Perhaps with the abundance card as well, there may just be like perhaps a shift in your in your work or just like your physical life, like just like your daily life, there may have been like a really big shift or change that caused a lot of pain. I'm wanting to link the abundance card to the Nine of Pentacles today as well, though, because it's the same energy. So maybe perhaps there was a moment where perhaps it just caused pain to this one, right? Perhaps there's a moment where there was pain or pain in the connection, right? It's not necessarily one person. It's always going to be sort of both. There was pain in the connection, and perhaps that's what you're wanting to shift into growth, because for pain, it's always sort of painful in the moment, but when you look back on the experience, like once you've moved past it kind of thing, it'll always look back. You can always look back on it as a period of growth. That's sort of how I transmute that energy, where it's like, if there was something painful, that means that you learned something or grew from it. And then what you have here, because all of these cards are kind of a little bit challenging, I want to say. Challenging in that, like, for me, I'm not sure exactly how to explain the Eight of Swords. The next card out was the Seven of Pentacles and the Queen of Cups. So I feel like because it's your reading, it's an area of growth for you where there's this Eight of Swords. The message that comes through with the Eight of Swords that I'm trying to sort of incorporate in this is like, don't break your own heart by assuming the worst kind of energy, where it's like, you may be assuming the worst. You may be kind of like anticipating pain or anticipating not a positive reaction or whatever it is, but it's like wanting you to shift to this focus where you anticipate success or the best case scenario kind of thing. And then here with the Seven of Pentacles and the Queen of Cups, because I feel like this is the area of growth for you. With the Queen of Cups is the most feminine out of the feminine, right? It's like the cups being emotional energy, which is more of a feminine energy, and it coming out as the Queen, as perhaps working on how to express emotional energy, because this card is sort of like wanting a resolution, but the heart space is protected. You're protecting sort of your heart or what perhaps makes you feel vulnerable, right? There's that kind of energy there as well, like perhaps protecting something that makes you feel vulnerable. And it's like that's what's wanting to be developed, I want to say. With the Seven of Pentacles, talks about doing the work, perhaps doing the work on expressing emotional or even painful emotions, right? It's like, if you like talking about what happened perhaps, or like explaining what happened, or even just like settling, even if it's not like an actual expression to another, it's within yourself of actually perhaps, especially because I was saying like perhaps you've locked it away, perhaps it's something that's needing to come up and out and acknowledged, right? You have here the awareness card as well, because this also came out in the DF reading, but it's coming out very differently for you. This was kind of in between how to shift your focus and where to grow. It's even just the awareness that there has been pain caused can be enough to sort of release it, is kind of how this is coming through. Or just gaining the awareness that any sort of pain means that there was growth, or that there was growth necessary, or that there's growth coming, that kind of thing, where all sort of expansion requires a bit of pain. Which is not an easy message to say, like to hear, even if you're not ready to hear that. But you have here the Nine of Wands and the Two of Swords, because these two cards came out for the Divine Feminine, so I feel like this may be their energy of like the Nine of Wands being sort of like, I feel like they're perhaps in this state of indecision or stuckness, because there's been a lot of false starts in the past is kind of how this nine of wands was coming through. I'm getting tired now, but it's talking about, because this card in their reading was talking about having to sort of shift, because it feels like jadedness, right? It's like they're almost like jaded about this whole experience now, because there's been a lot of false starts that didn't lead anywhere, is kind of how it's coming through. And so for them, the area of growth was to transform this energy of jadedness into sort of like a fresh start, kind of like new inspiration, clearing out old energies, that kind of thing. I feel like that's what their area of growth is, in order to sort of clear up this like indecision or stagnation, kind of perhaps not sure if they want the connection or not, because it kind of feels like with this Nine of Pentacles especially, it's like if there was an ending or a separation or like no communication between the two of you, it's kind of like this, your counterpart, the DF, was shifted their focus on creating their own manifestations, right? It's like wanting to bring in more abundance for themselves, that kind of thing, working on their craft, on their gifts, on all of this, like independence. But for their reading, it's like things were not working out because there's this sense that you, Divine Masculine, are ready to come in, or ready to sort of start something, right? And so that's perhaps what this combination of cards is talking about. It's like they may be defensive with this Nine of Wands, because there's been so many false starts in the past that they're almost like not focused on the connection, or not focused on you, or not focused on manifesting this reunion in some way. And that's sort of what the stagnation was for them. It's like they were unsure about what was happening because there's been so many false starts in the past, right? Anyways, so here, I feel like for you as well, what was coming through with this Emperor card, it's like maybe there's this energy of like trying to decide how to come forward, or what it is you can offer. And what's interesting here is that you have the Queen of Pentacles and the Ace of Pentacles. So because I always see this the Queen of Pentacles as being sort of like an upgrade, or the next progression from the Nine of Pentacles, one who's very independent to one who's in partnership, even though the Queen of Pentacles is still absolutely independent and sort of strong and stable on their own. It's specifically, to me, talks about partnership, and with the Ace of Pentacles is actually making that offer. If that's what you're wanting to do, DM, it doesn't have to be that. It could be something, just like something more physical, or like, because I see this Ace of Pentacles as like evidence that what it is that you're manifesting is coming in, right? It's like the physical evidence or the proof of it. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. I feel like it's even just like a small step or a small offer, or like it could just be this, because you have here the Liberation card and the Kindness. So the Liberation I was seeing as being connected to this Eight of Swords, because of course this card talks about like, and like don't break your own heart by assuming the worst, of like feeling like the situation is worse than it is, when you can really just remove that mindset or that blindfold, and it's being liberated from that mindset, right, of anticipating the worst. Because I feel like you are going to be met with kindness. You have kindness, connection, and compassion, right? I feel like, especially with the Queen of Cups, if that's not, well, I feel like that's an area of growth for you, but I feel like that's also your counterpart's energy of being in this energy of compassion and kindness. Like, if you explain what it is you've been going through, especially if it's been really painful, you're going to be met with kindness and compassion. Absolutely, is what that's talking about. And I feel like perhaps the only thing that they're wanting from you is connection of some sort, like some sort of acknowledgement or explanation. It doesn't even have to be like a big thing. right? A conversation. It could be this like Three of Cups energy where you just meet up for drinks or something like that. It could be as small as that. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot here of wanting to make a new choice, but feeling just anxious about it, or even just contemplating too much, maybe overthinking a little bit with the King of Swords, because the King of Swords does overthink or overplan, or has a lot of plans, has a lot of strategies, perhaps. And then the King of Wands is kind of just like needing to actually implement whatever those plans are. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it there. There are no extendeds for the twin flame readings, but you can go watch the divine feminine reading if you haven't already. I consider those as being sort of extendeds of one another. I do have other videos if you're interested in watching those. Thanks so much for sharing your energy with me, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.